Good afternoon, students. Welcome to this class, the first lesson in the series of lectures in the course Teaching Methods in English Language and Literature in English. The course is chapter 16 of the CC Maths book, Fundamentals of Education. In this course, we shall be examining the general approaches or methods of teaching English language and literature in English, teaching the different components of English: listening, speaking, reading, writing, grammar, and lexis. We shall also be teaching the methods or approaches and the techniques of teaching the literary genres. The course also involves using technology in teaching English and literature in English, as well as other issues relating to the effective teaching and learning of English language and literature in English. However, in this first lesson, we shall focus on the general approaches or methods of teaching English language and literature in English. We shall also consider the advantages and the disadvantages of each method or approach. You learned in your course, Curriculum and Instruction, that every language has fundamental principles and theories guiding its teaching and learning. By way of reminder, the principles and theories of language guiding instruction in English language include psycholinguistics, sociolinguistics, psychology, and linguistics. I'm just reminding you, you learned all this in your curriculum and instruction class. So when we talk about teaching English language, we have some terminologies that we shall be talking about. These are approaches, methods, strategies, and techniques. We shall be using these words or these terms interchangeably, as you will have noticed also that in literature, authors use them interchangeably. We are saying that approaches, methods, strategies, and techniques are pedagogical tools used in teaching English language. And I did say that in literature, if you are reading books on methods of teaching, you will find authors talking about approaches, methods, strategies, techniques, as if they mean the same thing. Why do you think this is so?
I think they are so because they all talk about ways by which we get things done.
Oh, excellent. Thank you, Blessing. That is it. So all of these pedagogical tools are dealing with ways of teaching English language. And of course, you know that the teaching of English language does not end with approaches, methods, strategies, and techniques at the general level. In other words, today in this lesson, we are going to be looking at general approaches or general methods. Why are we putting the word general? They are general in the sense that these approaches we are going to be talking about today do not only apply to the teaching of English language, they are also applicable to other subjects, which we refer to as content area instruction. The teaching of English language involves so many things, but we are limiting ourselves to just two of these objectives. You have, apart from these approaches and techniques, We also have the teaching of the components of English language. What are the components of English language that you have been learning from the time you started learning English language?
Listening, speaking,
Good.
reading, writing.
Thank you. Listening, speaking, reading, and writing. And of course, as we have listed them, listening and speaking come first. We talk about the primacy of oracy over and above literacy. You have to listen to the language first, speak it before you can continue with reading and writing. So these are the methods we'll be looking at today. Call them approaches, call them methods. As we said, you are saying the same thing. Even though we need to stress that they are different, their meanings are different, but in language, but the difference among them very subtle. You will learn more about that in our curriculum and instruction class. But just note that they can be used interchangeably, and we do that taking the liberty of synonymy. So let's go straight to the general methods that we want to look at today. We begin with the grammar translation method. This method is focused on the deductive teaching of grammatical rules and vocabulary through translation exercises. What do I mean here? It involves translating English language to other languages when the learner does not really understand. For example, when somebody, a child is just beginning to learn English language, you don't expect expertise immediately. It will take some time. He's coming into especially in Nigeria, where English language is our second language. The child is coming from a background of his native or indigenous language. Let us look at this screen. Let us look at this scenario in this classroom. You can see the children there. You can see the teacher saying, Inazua Sulaiman is speaking. What language is this teacher speaking here? Everybody?
Hausa language.
Hausa.
Thank you. That's Hausa language. And maybe fortunately or unfortunately for this teacher, an inspector enters the class and is accusing this teacher of speaking vernacular. This is an English language lesson. Why are you speaking vernacular? The inspector had to report the teacher to the principal. And the teacher, you can see the teacher there, Mrs. Dada, explaining that Sulaiman has just come from the village. He doesn't understand English. So he has to speak Hausa to the child. In Azua, Sulaiman, and Sulaiman is answering by Angida. So the teacher had to explain, if I do not speak Hausa here, Sulaiman will not understand what I am saying. So we have the direct method. This does not use any translation. It involves spontaneous communication in class by direct immersion. That is, we are just teaching English language as if it is the children's first language. Audiolingual method. This has to do with listening and speaking skills as the students or the children imitate the teacher, and it uses dialogues, conversations, repetitions, and choral. Communicative language teaching. This has to do with the use of language through discursive competence. It involves these areas of competence: discursive, sociolinguistic, and strategic. Crossover learning method. This is a method that combines learning in the classroom with informal situations. For example, you are teaching a concept in class. Maybe you want to teach them a reading passage on how to make garri, and you take them out of the classroom to an industry or a place where garri is being made. When you do that, you are using crossover learning method. The next one is scaffolding. Scaffolding is any support that a teacher gives to the students to enhance a learner-friendly environment for your teaching. And when it comes to English language, you do not bombard the students with grammatical rules. You just give them exercises where they will use the grammar, and you use dialogue, talking about communication that will enable the students to be relaxed in the classroom. PQRST This is another method, which means preview, question, read, and summarize text. As I said earlier, you will notice that all these methods are not peculiar to the English language classroom alone. For example, the PQRST you can use in teaching science, any science subject, because we talk about this content area instruction, because in any case, every subject involves the use of English. The QAR, question answer relationship, whereby you teach the children to question what they see in the text and relate it to their background knowledge. What do I know about this content? What is being discussed in this passage? What do I know about it before? What is the text doing? What is the text saying? What is the relationship between what I know about this content and what this passage is talking about? The next one is teaching with analogy. Of course, we are teaching a concept that the students are not familiar with. You look around you for something you can compare with it so that they can get the gist of what you are saying. Cultural, techno-contextual approach. This is an approach that features the culture, technology, and the context framework in the delivery of every lesson. There are procedures, there are steps to follow when using this method. You look at what you are teaching, you connect it with the cultural background of the students, and you use technology. As you know, students are always on their phones. They are familiar with technological tools that can enhance their learning. So you take advantage of this to teach the lesson. Cooperative learning method. This talks about putting students in groups. You must have experienced this. We do it periodically in class, where we put you into groups to so that you can interact and learn from one another. It's also another method of teaching English language and any subject for that matter. Dramatization. As the name suggests, drama. This is using make-believe shared activities or plays to illustrate a concept. For example, you can create scenes like the marketplace or a bank to teach students the vocabulary used in these places, and also enable them to have practical application of the language. It enhances their use of language and helps them to know how to use language in the different notions and functions. In dramatization, students are assigned specific roles where they play their parts. This is why this method is also known as role play. So what are the advantages and the disadvantages of this method? Of course, every method has its own weakness and strength, and that is why the list is not exhaustive. Now, you have listened to these methods and their characteristics. I want you to now think. This section is going to be interactive. The advantage of the grammar translation method, for instance, what do you think would be the advantage?
Like the chart you showed us, the teacher teaches in Hausa language so that the particular student can understand. I think that it will allow the student to easily understand, and then it will create a lively and interactive classroom environment.
Very good. It will also enhance the confidence of that child. He will not be afraid. He knows that if he does not understand something, the teacher will explain in a language that he will understand. Thank you very much, Olaiton. That's very brilliant. What do you think would be a disadvantage? As we said, every method will have its advantage and disadvantage. What do you think would be a disadvantage of that method in an English language classroom?
I think the disadvantage will be that it might make them drift away from the language that is being taught. Like they might not really want to focus on what is being taught. They might just want to using that other language that is used to interact with them.
Very good. They want to continue to use the language they are comfortable with. Yes, that's a good one. Thank you. Let's look at the direct method. What do you think would be an advantage of the direct method?
The development of speech and promote learners' involvement.
Very good. They will learn how to speak the language, because language is about communication. The more you use the language, the more expertise you gain. Thank you. So what is the disadvantage?
What I think would be the disadvantage of using the direct method is that the student may be exposed to the wrong language method of English through the teacher.
Exactly, especially if the teacher himself or herself is not a good speaker of the language. The child may be negatively influenced.
Talk about communicative language teaching, and one of the advantage of communicative language teaching is it focuses on the communicative goals of the language alone.
Most of the methods we have discussed under the teaching of English language are also relevant in teaching literature. If you look at those methods or approaches well, you will be able to identify those ones that you can use in the literature class. But apart from those, these approaches here are also useful in teaching literature in English. Information-based approach. As the word information you have there tells you, this is about studying culture, the values, and history of a people. When you read literature on people's history, their values, their culture, you are using the information-based approach, because you want to gather information and know about their ways of life. For example, Hausa, you want to know about the Igbos or the Yorubas. You read books about their history. When you do that in the classroom, it is information approach. It's an extension of the information-based, because it encourages you to read texts even outside your own culture or your own nation. You want to know what is happening in the world, you look at other people's culture to learn from them. The language-based approach, this is developing language proficiency in the literature class. You know literature in English, we use English as a text. And then when the students are reading, you want to use that text to enhance their proficiency. When you give them literature text, maybe prose to read, of course, it will have some positive effect, because they will learn the English language as the author has used it. The stylistic approach. Of course, when you teach literature, you study author styles. For example, you are teaching a text by Wole Soyinka. You want to compare his style of writing with that of Chinua Achebe. Different authors have their different styles of writing. And when you compare and teach the students to identify styles, so that they also will come up with their own style of writing. When you read what other people have written, you also will be able to write about them and to also bring up yourself as a writer. So this is how the stylistic approach is used. Study the style of one author and tell the children to use that style to write a story. That's, you are building their you are using the stylistic approach to teach writing. The thematic approach. This is making a connection between what you read in a book. Remember, every book will have its theme, especially in prose. It will have a theme. What is the theme of this text? What has the hero done? Look at the characters, the various characters, and use that to relate, for the children to use that to relate to their own individual life experiences. This is the thematic approach. Then the moral philosophical approach. You read a text, you study the students' reaction and their involvement what have they gained? If there is a particular character who is deficient in a way, or if there is a character that has impressed them in any way, they should be able to look at each character, judge them at their individual level and at the group level. And also, you can, as we said, any of those methods earlier discussed under English language, you can group the students into groups and allow them to share information, to share their beliefs and their reactions to the different characters in the books they read. In this lesson, we examined approaches, methods, strategies, and techniques as the pedagogical tools for teaching English language and literature in English. We considered some of the general tools for teaching English and literature in English, as well as content area instruction. We also discussed the advantages and the disadvantages of some of these methods. Do you have any question before I ask my own questions?
How can we use dramatization method in a class of 30 to 40 minute duration with over 100 students?
Oh, that's a good one. That's one of the disadvantages. You remember that it is not all situations that you can use all the methods. You look at the circumstances and use the method that is appropriate. If you have a large class, you look for a method that you will use to achieve your objective. Is that okay, Elizabeth?
Yes,
Yeah.
ma.
Any other question? Yes, Aisha, what's your question?
Okay, ma'am. When we talk about content instruction, what does it mean?
Oh, content area instruction. As I explained, this is teaching other subjects. You know, you have your English language classroom where you teach the components of English language, which Shikemi explained to us. For example, biology, chemistry, social studies, every subject uses English language, and they all have their textbooks. So children, learners must be able to read the textbooks to benefit maximally from instruction in those subjects. This is what we refer to as content area instruction. Because also, you know that comprehension is not just about English language classroom. We have our reading comprehension passages, yes. But for the content area instruction, the textbooks, the notes also serve as passages for them, which they must read and understand. So you use some of these methods in the classrooms. Look at this question. Instructional methods are not mutually exclusive. Do you agree with this assertion? You need to know that all these methods or approaches, as a student, do you observe or can you recollect any features of the grammar translation method still being put into practice? We are talking about teaching English language as a second language in Nigeria. Do this method is still being used?
I think it's still in use. But French teachers, anytime they want to teach French subjects, after writing a particular word in French, they usually translate it in English so that the students can comprehend and understand
Very good.
The content
Very
of the
good. That's
course.
your own experience. If you don't have any other question, enjoy your day. Enjoy your weekend.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
God bless.
God bless.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.